We're going to kick off this week with a couple of lessons that take a much closer look, much more detailed look at the balancer and chunk migrations. First, let's cover some logistics. First off, the balancer can be disabled. And we can do that with a simple command. We still have our test running here. First, let's see the balancer is currently running. That's what get balancer state does. Lets you know whether it's running or not. So there are two ways, first of all, to disable the balancer. The first is to disable it completely. And this will just stop all balancing once the current round is complete. Of course, if there's an active round, it doesn't abort. It will continue until it's complete. But any future balancing will then be stopped. So let's take a look at how to do that. The recommended way is this sh.stopBalancer helper. When we look at the code, as in previous modules, if you run a command or a helper without the parentheses, you get to see what it's actually doing. In this case, what it's doing is it's setting the balancer state to false. So you can run this command yourself, sh.setBalancerState, and pass in false yourself. But all that is doing is updating the particular setting. It's not actually waiting for the balancer to stop. So what the stop balancer helper does is not only run and set the balancer state to false, but also waits for the balancer itself to, well, stop balancing. So let's run this. And now if we do our get balancer state, we can see that it's false. So the stop balancer is a handy tool. If you find it hanging for a long time, it probably just means there's an in-flight migration, and it will return eventually, which is why there are some timeout parameters that you can pass in. That's the recommended way to turn it off completely. And of course, the way to turn it back on, as you would expect, start balancer. And very, very similar again. It's just running the set balancer state helper, setting it to true, and then waiting for that to actually work. So let's run that, and then we can finally check our balancer state again, and we get true. So there you go. Start balancer and stop balancer. Those are my recommended helpers for administering the actual balancer itself. You're welcome to use the other component commands if you so wish, but just be aware that they will return immediately because they're essentially just updating a particular field in the config database, and hence won't wait for the actual setting to take effect. Really quickly, let's just verify that that's exactly what's happening. So we'll turn it off again. We'll go to our config database, and we can see that the balancer stopped true. When we run start balancer again, redo our find, balancer stopped false. So it's back to running again. So that's how you administer it overall for the entire cluster. There is one other feature, and that is the ability to turn off balancing for particular collections. And that is accessed via the disable balancing helper. And again, if we run this without parentheses, we can see what it's actually doing. It's going to update the collections collection in the config database, and it's going to update a particular entry, and it's going to set no balance to true. Okay, so this is depending on the actual collection that you're passing in yourself. So disable balancing asks you to pass in the collection name, and actually the collection name is the fully qualified name. So you have to pass in the database.collection name, and we have just such a collection from our earlier testing. Database name was shardtest, and the collection name was foo. So if we do sh.disableBalancing shardtest.foo, go, and let's verify that that change has actually happened. We can see shardtest.foo now has this field added to it, no balance true. So we've disabled balancing just for this particular collection. Again, this will only be picked up for future balancing rounds. So if there's an active migration going on, active balancing round going on, the balancer will continue that until it's complete, and then after that will respect this setting. Now to re-enable balancing, we just run enable balancing shardtest.foo, and just for completeness, because we looked at the disable version, you can see that what it's actually going to do is essentially the reverse here. It's going to set no balance to false. So just a little helper to manage those settings so that you don't have to do it manually yourself. And just to be 100% sure, let's rerun and have a look at our collections collection. And you can see no balance is now set to false. So the balancer, when it kicks in again, we'll see that this is now ready to be balanced once again. So there you go. You can turn the balancer off completely. You can turn the balancer off for specific collections. So let's just note that. It can be turned off globally or per collection.